You're listening to the Sex and Psychology Podcast, the sex ed you never got in school and won't get anywhere else. I am your host, Dr. Justin Miller. I am a social psychologist and research fellow at the Kinsey Institute and author of the book, Tell Me What You Want, The Science of Sexual Desire and How It Can Help You Improve Your Sex Life. We are living in an era where sexual health is becoming more measurable, more personalized, and more data-driven than ever before. For many years, erectile issues have largely been diagnosed by guesswork and managed by one-size-fits-all approaches. But today, new technology is giving us insights into men's erections that we've never had access to, revealing what really causes fading firmness, how to figure out the solution that's right for your unique situation, and even offering early warning signs about cardiovascular health. This shift has the potential to completely transform how we understand, track, and treat erectile function. In this show, we're going to talk about why the field of ED treatment is ripe for disruption, as well as the new tech that's changing the game by providing men and their doctors with objective sexual health information that can be leveraged for more effective treatment. We'll also discuss how this technology can also make sex even better, and also how it's changing the science of men's health. I am joined once again by Dr. Elliot Justin, the CEO and founder of FirmTech, a sex tech company focused on keeping men fit and firm for a lifetime of lovemaking. He is an emergency medicine specialist and healthcare technology consultant who has spent 25 years practicing emergency medicine and directing ERs. This is going to be a fascinating conversation that you won't want to miss. Stick around because we're diving in right after the break. When a relationship is shaken, especially by infidelity, standard therapy alone often isn't enough. You need someone who understands the full complexity of what just happened. The shock, the grief, the sexual fallout, the disconnection, and the hope that things can still be repaired. You need a guide who can hold all of that at once and actually show you a way forward. That's exactly what Thread and Tether offers. This practice is led by Jason Powell, a licensed marriage and family therapist and ASEX certified sex therapist who specializes in helping couples navigate betrayal, rebuild trust, and rekindle intimacy. Jason sits at the rare intersection of infidelity repair, sex therapy, and relational intimacy, and he treats these not as separate issues, but as deeply interwoven threads that have to be untangled together. One of the things that makes Thread and Tether unique is Jason's focus on in-person intensives in Boston. These are immersive, structured, deep dive sessions designed for couples in the immediate aftermath of betrayal or for those who feel stuck for months or even years later. It's the kind of focused support that weekly therapy sometimes can't provide. Jason works virtually across many states and offers in-person sessions in both Boston and Manhattan by arrangement, so specialized care is accessible no matter where you're located or where you are in the healing process. If you and your partner are trying to make sense of what happened, rebuild trust, or find your way back to intimacy, Thread and Tether offers expert guidance, compassion, and a roadmap for real change. You can learn more at threadandtether.com or check the show notes for the link. Okay, Elliot, so you founded a health technology company called FirmTech. Now, before we get into the tech itself, what problem were you trying to solve when you created FirmTech? What wasn't working in the existing ED landscape that made you think that there was an opportunity to try something new here?
Two things led to this. One was something that I called Project O for obvious reasons. I live in Montana, Justin, and I love riding horses. My wife says I ride like a 15-year-old. I ride at least like a 25-year-old, but I can be kind of feckless. So I was riding down a trail, and some do-gooder had cut a tree that had fallen over the trail so that you could walk underneath it, but you couldn't ride a horse underneath it. And I broke 6 ribs and 6 vertebrae. Fortunately, I didn't have a spinal cord injury, but that got me interested in what's been done to improve sexual health, restore sexual health for men and women who had a spinal cord injury. And there were 6 papers in the medical literature saying that they were able to neuromodulate sexual response. So the neuromodulation that people know about is cardiac pacemaking. We implant an electrode, we have a battery pack under, and we can control the heart. Imagine being able to do that for sexuality, especially in an aging population, especially in a population where, by my age, the incidence of erectile dysfunction is 70%. The impact would be enormous from this. I tried it out on 2 rams, male sheep, and I got erection, ejaculation, but I also got defecation and urination. So it wasn't exactly bedroom friendly unless you're really kinky. So ordinarily, what someone would do in those circumstances was go to Silicon Valley or to New York City and raise $15, $20 million and then go down to Nigeria or Colombia, Brazil, and test it out on 25 men with ED. But I instead had a friend of mine who's a urologist implant an electrode by my pudendal and cavernous nerves everyone's two favorite nerves that no one talks about or sort about, the ones that nerves come out from underneath the pubic bone in men and women and are responsible for arousal and climax. And we tried all sorts of amplitudes and frequencies, and I felt nothing. And this gets back to the very first question you asked me, how do erections happen? I don't think we actually know. I mean, if we can't neuromodulate it, then we really haven't figured out how it works. I can stick an electrode in your arm and I can make your arm move. I can control your heart, but I can't produce an erection. Now, these other doctors claim that they did. I think after COVID, we all should be suspicious of the medical literature because a lot of it's not. We know that on your side of it, on the psychosocial side, more than 50% of the research is simply unreproducible. And whether that's because people are just lying, to my mind, either can produce an erection or can't produce an erection. So, but I called this Project O. I tried to get it published, but negative studies almost never get published. I don't think we actually know about the neurophysiology of arousal and climax. We know some aspects of it. So a urology professor at the University of Utah 4 years ago heard about Project O. He wanted to count the number of nocturnal erections. And I said, what the fuck for? Because I didn't know anything about it. Because I know about one morning wood and laugh about it, but I didn't know anything the rest about it. And he said, it's a leading indicator of man's cardiovascular health. And I said, well, that's really interesting. But I asked him, have you ever used a cock ring? And of course, like most straight doctors, certainly straight men, he had no experience with cock rings. I call them cock ring virgins. And I said, well, why don't we embed sensors into a cock ring, come up with a cock ring that can be worn comfortably overnight and during sex, and then we can measure all erections. Because what do men care more about? The ones that happen in the night shift, the ones that happen while trying to have sex. That's the background story for this. I had tried to neuromodulate human sexuality, and this urologist gave me more information about the significance of nocturnal erections in terms of cardiovascular health. But because I'm also really interested in this, I thought, well, let's measure all erections, because with this technology, we can measure duration and firmness of nighttime erections and daytime erections. And with that, we can actually challenge everything that's been proposed for men. So right now, when it comes to men's health, I think in the last half hour, we kind of dumped on PD5 medications, talked about making testosterone therapy objective. In the world of men's health, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, because the problem, guys who want orthodox performance, they'll walk on broken glass to get a solution. So what really works? Well, now we have technology that can be used to challenge everything. Mm-hmm. And I'll list them for you. Penis pumps. We know they can make your dick bigger, but do they increase sustained blood flow? There's a paper going on right now, and to my surprise, it's positive. I'm involved in these research projects. We lend our technology. I kind of make a guess. Go, is this going to work or is it not going to work? It's trending positive. That's sustained pumping, not like, hey, once in a while, but sustained pumping can not only increase size, but more importantly, from the perspective of performance, increase blood flow. There's about to be a study about extenders. We know that extenders are used to treat Peyronie's disease, but also guys use them to make their dick bigger. Do they increase blood flow? Well, there are anecdotal reports of not just length being increased, but girth being increased. Well, if you're increasing girth, maybe you are increasing blood flow. If you told me a year ago that what I thought, I would have said, I don't think this will work. And now I think, maybe it does work. Shockwave therapy. Well, the shockwave doctors will shock anything that walks because they're making money. Mm-hmm. But with our device, we can actually determine is it going to work and what's the right dose. So if a guy says he has problems in bed, but he's got 4 or 5 nocturnal erections, it's probably a placebo effect. On the other hand, for a guy, and these are some patients that I have, if they're in this sort of weaker range, like they're men in their 40s, men your age, I got 3 of them right now I'm taking care of, who have 3 nocturnal erections. That's like a man my age. They should be having, 4+ nocturnal erections. They should be having a certain duration of firmness. 2 of these guys got shockwave therapy, and they can actually say, okay, well, now I see, I'm getting better. I'm not just guessing. And I also know when to stop the therapy, because at some point, the people who are doing shockwave therapy will tell you, hey, you're paying for a course of 10 of these, but maybe you're better after 4 of them. You can save your money. Mm-hmm. Pelvic floor exercises. Not working. Not producing more blood from the penis. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't do them, because people who are overweight, who've had urological surgery, bowel surgery, they will certainly benefit from increased pelvic tone. But in terms of putting more blood in the penis, you haven't seen that. Supplements. Multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States. Go to any gas station or sex toy store or online. L-arginine, citrulline, horny goatweed, maca root, ashwagandha, et cetera, et cetera. Nitric oxide, big one. Hey, it's scientific. It should work. Sounds like it should work. We haven't found any supplement alone to work. There's one supplement, that combination of 3 of them, that has shown some benefit increasing nocturnal flow in men with significant ED, but in general, they don't work. So now, instead of relying upon celebrity endorsements, influencers, gossip, opinion, men can now actually use data to say, okay, I got a problem, or I'm not a problem, but I want to know where I stand, what my baseline is, or I want to optimize for performance. Men can actually say, okay, I'm going to put this tech ring on. I'm going to test out the things that interest me.
Yeah. So you created a technology that can help men to kind of keep a beat on their erectile health and fitness. So let's dive into what that technology actually looks like. So one of your main products is what's called the tech ring. What exactly is a tech ring? What does it do? How does it work? And how is it different from just a traditional penis ring that you might buy at a sex shop?
Sure. Well, it gives data. Then the rings in the sex shop toy stores we'll talk about in a moment, but it gives data. So it basically embedded two sensors, a pressure sensor and a strain gauge into a cock ring. I prefer to call them erection rings because that's what they're doing. They sustain erections. So I like to call them erection rings. Let's take it out of the realm of a $10 novelty that you buy in the store. But we embedded sensors in them. And I got involved in this for the data. In order to have a ring that could be worn comfortably overnight for 8 to 10 hours, we needed to change the material and the form of rings. So the rings that most men are familiar with, it's an O-ring or a lasso. They're made out of silicone. They pinch. They're uncomfortable. And men who have compromised circulation, like diabetes or hypertension, they can actually damage the tissue. And the recommendation is that they shouldn't be worn for more than 20, 30 minutes. I've used cock rings for most of my life, but I've never really had one that caught on for me because they're uncomfortable. And after you have a climax, you want the damn thing off right away. And you got to dig your fingers into it and pop the thing off. And putting it on can be uncomfortable as well, too. So in order to count the data overnight, we had to go from silicone, which makes us adapt to it, to something that allows the arterial blood to flow in. It adapts to us. And I owe two ideas to my wife. And frankly, I owe it to one of the most common ways I suspect in which heterosexual sex and a committed relationship initiates, which is bras are uncomfortable. Women want their back scratched when the bra comes off. Scratching my wife's back, I see on her desk a stress ball. And they made out of elastomer, not silicone. And I thought, duh, why aren't we making cock rings out of something that's softer that will allow the arterial blood to flow in, but only constrain the venous returns? And I looked on the ground and I saw a bra. And I thought, a bra is a ring that opens and closes with a hook. Women don't put on bras over their head. Maybe sports bras. Don't put on bras over their head. Why don't we make a cock ring that opens and closes with a hook? That way, it's a safety feature. If it is uncomfortable, it can be popped off easily. We've sold 24,000, maybe 25,000 devices, 4,000 with the technology, the rest without technology. We've had zero, men go to the ER. We've had zero men require medication. So we designed something that's softer, more comfortable, can be worn for longer periods of time. And by the way, I don't want to have sex 20, 30 minutes. I thought sex for 45, 50 minutes. I don't know about you, Joe, but I think that's about the right amount of time. And it'll collect data. So one, during sex, it'll measure duration of firmness. So men can now measure the impact. Heck, you can gamify it. But what's the impact of alcohol or marijuana on performance? I got guys using it in relationships. Hey, I'm harder with her than I am with him. But, or people can measure the impact of medications upon sexual performance, PD-5 medications, et cetera. One overnight, importantly, we also count the number of nocturnal erections that are a leading indicator of man's cardiovascular health, measures the duration of firmness. And that's profoundly valuable as well, too, because we all want to enjoy good cardiovascular and sexual health. So the ring is also a penoscrotal ring. So it doesn't slide down the shaft. You drop your balls in and you wrap it around. That was done for three reasons. One, if the sensors were just around the base of the shaft of the penis, we would get rotational artifact from movement. So the balls provide an anchor. Two, we want to put a little more blood into the testicular sac because the balls are secondary erogenous zone. By putting a little more blood in, we make them more sensitive. Three, we want to hold the balls in a consistent location during sex. Why? Because what do guys want during sex with their balls? Touched, caressed, slapped, tied up, whatever. But balls go up or down. They're here, there. Where are they? So that's why I went with a penoscrotal design. But then having come up with a ring that would be worn comfortably for long periods of time, I realized, wait, I've solved the cock ring problem. 90% of gay guys use cock rings regularly, and only 10% of straight guys do it because they know more than we do. And also they're willing to put up with discomfort to maximize their pleasure. I realized that I now had a ring that actually could enhance a man's pleasure because it could be worn for longer periods of time. But then my thought was, well, how can we improve a man's orgasm? And vibrators don't work for men the way they work for women. They're secondary source of pleasure for men. It's the unusual man who can just, climax with, vibrator. So my thought was to put the right amount of pressure over the urethra to increase the ejaculatory phase. Not choke it all, because then you get retrograde ejaculation. That can be uncomfortable, cause lead to infection. So we tested on 28 men in Montana. This is the maximum performance ring. And when we had the right degree of elasticity and grip from the elastomer, every guy's ejaculatory phase with their phone stopwatch was increased by 50%. That's the product that we made. We call it the maximum performance ring. So with that ring, my ejaculatory phase goes from 4 seconds to 7 seconds. And that's an incredible orgasm. And I don't have sex without a ring now. 4 years ago, I would have said I don't need it. And now it's not about need, it's about want. So here are 5 questions that every man that's listening to this show should ask themselves, assuming they don't use a ring. Do you want to rock harder? Well, with a ring, my growth increases by 4 to 5 millimeters. That ain't a lot. No one's going to walk by and say, oh, damn, porn star. But that's more blood than my penis can hold with any amount of vaginal, oral, manual stimulation. The more blood's held in your penis, the more sensitive it is, the better it is. So, do you want to rock harder? Do you want to last longer? Sure. Do you want to have a more intense orgasm? Of course. Do you want to be more confident? And this is back to something we discussed previously. Do you want to know that I don't need to put off having sex? I'm not worried about losing my erection because I shouldn't have smoked that entire joint, or I shouldn't have had that third cocktail, or, gee, my wife and I had a fight earlier today. Maybe it's just not going to work out. Whatever it is, or you're taking beta blocker, or you're taking antidepressant that's having an impact. And do you want your partner to be more confident than you? Because whether the partner is male or female, if they care for you at all, they think about your performance as well too. So to know that you're going to stay hard with minimal stimulation for a longer period of time, it builds their confidence as well. So all men want all 5 of those things. All men should be thinking not just about getting the data, but about the impact of a ring upon optimizing their performance.
Yeah. So the ring sounds very different from a traditional cock ring that you might buy in a sex shop, right? And I think it's always worth pointing out that if you're buying one of those sex shop rings, you can use it as a sexual enhancer. That's totally fine, but you have to be very careful in terms of the duration that you're wearing it. And especially if you buy one that's made of a metal material, something that's very rigid, it can sometimes be more difficult to remove. And there's a fair number of cock ring emergencies that send people to the ER every year because they put it on and they can't get it off. And if you can't get the cock ring off, it can actually damage the tissue of your penis. And that's something that you definitely don't want to happen. So there's some caution that's always warranted when it comes to using traditional cock rings, but yours is very unique in the sense that it can be worn for these much longer periods of time because it doesn't constrict the penis as much or in the same way that the traditional cock rings do.
Correct. Traditional cock rings, you have to have an erection, and then you have to put it on. It's basically lynching your dick. Who wants to lynch their dick? Whereas our ring allows the arterial blood to flow in and only constrains the venous return, kind of like if you had a plug across a sink they're covered up 60, 70%. This has really surprised me and pleased me, Justin, because I didn't think this would be the case. I certainly thought that by now. I'm guessing that our rings for sexual purposes have been used well over 1 million times. And we haven't had anyone go to the ER. And given male hygiene, I would have thought by now I would have had at least a dozen guys send me pictures of themselves with yeast infection in the groin from leaving the ring on or not keeping themselves clean and leaving the ring off, trying to put it on. Haven't even seen that. We can get the occasional, it pulls on my pubic hair or it pulls on my skin. But I'm really pleased with the safety, demonstrated safety of the device.
So this ring gives you actual data, like objective data about the health of your penis. And it can give you information that you can use to just kind of better understand, like, how are things going down there and how are things changing over time? But then you could also potentially share that data with your doctor to better understand, like, is a treatment warranted or what's likely to work for me? So I wondered if you could just kind of give us an example of like how you could take this data and then use it to actually not just make your sex life better, but just be a healthier person in general.
I'm not a urologist by background. And one thing that surprised me and pleased me early on was that it turned out that men who are recovering from prostate surgery are utilizing the technology in order to monitor their recovery. When do I get nocturnals? When I get nocturnals, I can start trying to have sex. When I start trying to have sex, now we're looking at 4 or 5 months after surgery, what therapy is working for me? Because the doctors will recommend the kitchen sink. They take this pill, pump, do pelvic exercise, do lots of things, but not all of them work for people. You can use this device to determine what the right dose of testosterone is for you, what the right dose of PD-5 medication is for you. It's really valuable, I think, for therapists as well. We have a few therapists who are, if they're taking care of a man alone or if they're taking care of a couple, as a therapist, you don't want to miss out on cardiovascular problem. We've had 3 men I'm aware of get cardiac catheterizations because their data was so poor. All those men had the device pulled for them by their wives, which is kind of sad in a way, but women pay more attention to health issues than men do. Men should pay more attention to what's going on. So I see this device as transformational in urology and andrology because we're taking men's healthcare into the world of the 21st century, objective, data-driven, personalized care.
So you often use the metaphor that when it comes to sexual health, men are driving without a dashboard, but the TechRing can serve as kind of this dashboard for you. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how having real-time erection data and being able to see changes over time can shift the way that men approach their sexual health. I mean, the way I'm thinking about this is that ED is typically something we only approach in a very reactive way. We typically don't start doing anything to address erectile health until we've already got a well-established problem. But with the kind of data we can get from the TechRing, maybe we could start to approach this in a more proactive way.
That's my hope. One thing that drove me to get involved in this, ideally, we identify problems from signals before they become more overt and difficult to take care of. Ideally, we take preventive measures. I mean, in the rest of healthcare, I just had a doctor in the UK 2 days ago tell me, why would you want this data? If someone has a problem, then you take care of it. Then that's that doctor reactive mindset. I don't think it's a problem if my tests are normal. Matter of fact, I like it. If I go to the doctor and have a normal electrocardiogram, a normal stress test, normal proteins, I feel good about my health, but I've also know I've established a baseline. And then if I get further testing, I can see changes before they become significant. And that's what men can do with this technology. And if they have a problem, then they can actually help figure out what the right way of dealing with it is because they can track their improvement. And then there's optimization. We all want to not just be average, we want to be above average. So when our data set was small, we saw the really launch like 2.5 to 3 years ago, and the data set just had 1,000 erections in it, a couple hundred men. That was not particularly valuable comparatively. But now with several thousand men and well over 100,000 erections, you can say, Justin, at your age, gee, I don't want to be average. I want to be the top 1% or the top 10%. Maybe there's something I could be doing in order to get there. And of course, by doing that, you'll also be preventing problems from occurring.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the really cool things about this technology is that you've amassed this database on erectile health, right? So your products aren't just helping men who are using it to better understand their own sexual health and address potential problems. You're also changing the science, right? And so I'm curious, are there other things you've learned from having amassed this huge database of erections that have maybe given you new insights or discoveries into erectile health?
I've learned about what doesn't work. I don't think supplements work. I've learned about the power of the ring to optimize pretty much everyone's sexual performance. And I've kind of gotten skeptical about the way in which most doctors, in fact, most therapists approach this. Let's go back to erectile dysfunction and the problems in the definition. So erectile dysfunction is defined as the inability to get an erection or to maintain erection. Well, they were already dealing with 2 different groups of men. These are 2 totally different problems. It shouldn't be, hey, you have ED. It should be, if it's one or the other, they actually defer the questions. And then the last part of that phrase is can't attain or can't maintain achieve satisfactory intercourse. Most people aren't having intercourse. That's what's been really interesting as well, too, talking to customers and patients. Intercourse is in most established relationships, and of course, I mean penetrative sex, is just part of the play. It's not the end game for most people. And the therapy world, the doctor world, with their IEIEFs and their SHIM scores and their AMS, they treat intercourse as if it's the be-all and end-all, and it isn't. And then satisfactory, what does that mean? A climax? Or someone else satisfied someone else? Both people have to be satisfied? So I think we need to go back to basics and redefine what is dysfunction, what is not dysfunction, and ask more questions, better questions about what's going on between people.
Yeah. And, that does get at a bigger issue is how do you define any sexual dysfunction in general? Because one person's sexual problem could actually be something that another person eroticizes or enjoys. If you think about something like premature ejaculation, a lot of men find that to be really distressing. But I also know many people who find it really erotic and arousing that they have a partner who can climax almost instantaneously and who just can't control themselves. It's all about matter of perspective and the way that you interpret a lot of these things.
Well, that one's another one where men get dumped on. Do we complain about premature ejaculation in women? I mean, if a woman comes really quickly, it's kind of complimentary, isn't it? But sometimes if a guy comes quick, like 2 or 3 minutes. And by the way, most people, you probably as well too, I have people saying they have premature ejaculation. Then when you get into it, wait a second, you had sex for over 10 minutes. So she didn't climax. So you have premature ejaculation. That's not premature ejaculation.
Yeah.
But then for women, it's like, well, coming quickly is, often something that they like. I don't know. To your point, Justin, I'm on the objective side of this. I want to make things objective. Your erection should be a 9 or 10 in firmness. If it's a 6 or less, you got a problem. You should be having 4+ nocturnal erections per night. If not, you got a problem. You need to look into it. I'm on the objective side. I recognize there's a big subjective side, huge when it comes to lovemaking, but I want to help people out on the objective side, and that's been lacking in the past.
Yeah, so pay attention to those nocturnal erections because they're a big indicator of your overall sexual health and your overall just physical health and wellness in general. So thank you so much for this amazing conversation, Elliot. It was a pleasure to have you here. Can you please tell my listeners where they can go to learn more about you and your work and to get an erection ring of their own?
Sure. You go to myFirmTech, MyFirmTech, myFirmTech.com. You can also reach me directly at Elliot, ELLIOT, at myFirmTech.com. I set aside 4 or 5 hours my week to answer questions. If you send something to me, I will respond usually within 1 or 2 days. Put a ring on it.
Put a ring on it. Well, I'll be sure to include links to all of that in the show notes. Thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate having you here.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you for listening. To keep up with new episodes of this podcast, visit my website, Sex and Psychology, at sexandpsychology.com, or subscribe on your favorite platform, where I hope you'll take a moment to rate and review the show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please consider becoming a Sex and Psychology Premium subscriber to enjoy ad-free listening for just $3.99 a month. You can also follow me on social media for daily sex research updates. I'm on Blue Sky and X at Justin Lehmiller and Instagram at Justin J. Lehmiller. Also, be sure to check out my book, Tell Me What You Want. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.